welcome back to another video of Threadcraft, where I pull my hair out because everything's going wrong. So today we're going to make some pendulum mats. So here are some examples. So these are mats that, I know that that's not going to show up very well, but these are mats that I make for divination, and I do sell them as well. So these are going to be some pre-made ones, ones that I've made before, and also I'm hoping to use some different colours. So like I showed you on my organisation video, I'm going to try and use some different colour velvet. So first of all, we have our pattern already on the machine, and I'll show you that in a second. Now these patterns are 8 inches by 8 inches. So I am going to use an 8 by 8 hoop. This does not typically come with the machine. You have to buy this separately, but you know, it's a worthy investment. The only other option that you have would be an 8 by 12 inch hoop, which is fine, but you will have quite a bit of extra material, so to speak. So if you want to try and conserve your stock, then you probably want to invest in an 8 by 8. Now with that being said, as mentioned before, the machine does leave an inch gap all the way around. So technically, when you measure this, it is actually a 10 by 10 inch, but the space that it actually embroiders on is 8 by 8. So first off, taking the hoop apart, I'm taking some water soluble stabilizer. Now in the pattern, it normally says that you require 2 layers of this, but because I'm cheap and I want this to last, I'm going to do 1. Now pop that on. Now we can pin this. You can leave it as it is, but I'm going to pin it just to make sure when I have any mess ups. Tension test, make sure it's nice and taut. If not, you can just adjust and obviously repin. That's it. Okay, so now this is going to go onto the machine. Yes, I'm not putting anything on it because first off it's going to stitch out with the outline. This is the pattern. Okay, make sure that's on 0. Yep. So we have 8 thread changes. Going to take us about 27 minutes. That is the thread count, and as you can see, these are all the steps here. Now first off, it's going to stitch out the outline only, then we can start to put together our mat. So I'm just going to take any thread here, so this is just what's been left on from last time. So now it's going to stitch out. So now that we've done that, it's moved on to the next stage. Okay, and once when it's stitched out, you'll be able to see that this next outline is actually slightly smaller than the original, and the reason for that is this is where the padding is going to go. So here I just have some wadding padding, which is what gives it that nice softness. Now in terms of wadding, this is just a fire resistant wadding, which is polyester. It's a polyester 80-20 mix, meaning that it's 80% polyester and 20% cotton. Fire retardant. You can use others such as a full cotton, bamboo mix. There is absolutely loads. So one of the issues that I came across when I first started doing this was if you are using a wadding that's like this, then the foot is going to get caught in the wadding. So one way that you can avoid that is by not using this and possibly using something like felt or cotton wadding, you know, something that's not as bitter, I guess you could say. You could also, you know, adjust this so you can put like a fancy little foot that pushes it down and makes a pathway. The one thing that I've found easiest is to change the height of my foot. Okay, so I'll show you how I do that. So on my machine, I'm going to go here, which is essentially settings. I'm going to go through until I find, there we go, this one. So here we can see we have a speed, which is handy for when you're using things like metallic thread. So metallic thread, it's a bit more stretchy, a bit more bouncy, so you'll want to reduce the speed. You can change the tension, and here is the foot height. So I'm going to put that all the way up to the top, which is 7.5. See, can't let me go any further. So now the foot at the moment will stay at this distance. Okay, this is its natural normal distance. But once when it starts stitching, you'll see that it does go up, leaving that room, leaving that gap. Okay, so I'm just sticking with the same thread right now. So as you can see, it's just tall enough to not get caught. You do still have to keep an eye on it just in case there's like a little bit that does get underneath the foot, because if it does get caught on the foot, that's it, it's going to rip this whole thing off. So you do need to be careful about that. Now that that's done, going back onto our settings, which has stayed for us, great. We're going to change this back to 0. No, sorry, 1.5. Okay. And we're not going to change this settings anymore, so we can get rid of that. Close. There we go. Right. So, as you can see, we're now on stage 3. And we have to do a little bit before we continue. So, next step is to cut out the excess material. So I've taken some small scissors, these are known as embroidery scissors. I'm going to cut, getting rid of any excess material. Now it's important that you don't cut the stitching, because obviously then what's the point? You're just going to have to redo it again. It doesn't matter if you don't get it perfect, because it will get covered up. Just as long as the bulk is removed, that's fine. This first line here, this was our very first line, the outline. This second line is where we've cut up to, and this is the line for the wadding. So what this gap does is it leaves a nice clean gap between the wadding and the satin stitch, so it's not as bulky. So from here, now that we've cut it out, we're going to add our velvet. So I'm going to take this beautiful purple, okay, and I want to make sure that the direction is going to be facing me. So let's have this, so that's where it goes into the machine, towards me, and then I'm going to feel, and I want the soft side to be coming towards me. So that side's rough, this side's smooth, so I'm going to have it laying like this. Now this does have some stretch to it. It's only one way stretch, so if I try and stretch it that way, it's not very stretchy. If I stretch it this way, there is quite a bit. Okay. So when you're pinning it down, do be aware that if you do have extra stretch, that you don't stretch it too much, Otherwise the batting will show, and that you stretch it enough to keep it taut. Okay. And we are pinning it down. You can use tape again. I prefer to use pins when I'm doing this kind of stuff, purely because when you begin to peel back that tape, it can get stuck and it can fray it. So this just keeps the material a bit better. So I'm not pulling it massively, as you can see. I'm just making sure that, okay, like that. And then same here. I'm not over pulling it, I'm just making sure that we not going to have any bumps and lumps, essentially. You are going to have some stretching because you need some give, but as long as it's kind of as flat as it can get, then that's fine. Okay. So this is going to go back onto the machine, but before we embroider onto it, we're going to add a top stabilizer. Okay, so this is wash away or water soluble stabilizer top mesh. Can't remember the full name of it, but this is essentially what you would use when you have softer material, so cases like velvet or towels or even dressing gowns, so that the stitches don't sink into the material and ruin the material. We use this to keep it sitting on top of softer material, because without this the stitches will sink and it will just get lost inside the fabric. Okay. So this doesn't need to be tacked down at all, so this is going to go back on. So before we continue, I'm going to change the thread. So I'm going to swap it out for a silver one. There we go, you can see that better, much better. Okay. Push that down. Let it go. So first off, it's going to stitch out an outline to tack down that velvet. Now I'm going to keep the silver, and it's going to start doing the pattern. So first off, going to do this bit around here, then it's going to do the center, then it's going to do the writing. And it does pause in between all them steps, so you can change the colour of the thread as you're going through. Yay! Okay, let's change the bobbin together then. So this is what happens when you run out of the bobbin. So you can see there's not much left. So empty bobbin goes up here. And the thread, there is a pattern that you need to follow. That's done. Cut the thread, take that off and pop it into the machine. Look at that. Put the cap back on. There we go. Then we need to change the thread path. So instead of it coming here, we need to get it to go round and down here. Now the issue is because it's paused, is that once when it restarts, you can experience a gap or a shift in the stitch. So it's always best to go back by a couple of stitches. So you just simply press this. I'm going to go back by 20, and yes, it will overlap the stitch, however that's not at the end of the world because we want it to be nice and secure. We don't want any skip stitches or anything like that. Put that back down and we're going to let it go. Now that it's done the pattern, so all that's left now is to pop the back onto it, sew it down, tack it down, and then do a satin stitch to seal it all and make it look nice and pretty. So let's do that. So first things first, I'm going to flip over. This is a anti-static satin cloth that I always use or try to use on the bottoms of these, especially with it being velvet. It can get staticky quite quickly. And now you can tape this. It does make it easier if you tape. You just have to be a bit more careful with the corners because they can fold over like this, which means that not only will this be exposed, but you'll also have to unpick it and get rid of that extra material. I use pins with this flathead, and I pin all 4 corners, as you can see. And again, you don't want it to be pulled too tight, you just want it to be flat. And if you wanted to, you could also iron it. I have ironed it a few times, but this just wrinkles quite a lot, so I'm going to wait until I've cleaned them up to iron them again. So now that that's on, I'm going to put it back under the machine. It's going to do an outline, so it'll tack the back of this down. Then we'll cut out the excess material, so front and back, cut out the excess material, and then it'll do the satin stitch, and we're done. So in order to change the thread colour, I'm going to change it into this darker purple. So this does match, there's a cut out here. So this does match our current colour. Can't really see it well because it's got the casing over it. Should be able to see it better now. There you go. When you do a satin stitch, you want to make sure that your bottom thread is the same as your top thread, unless you're going for a two-toned colour thread. It's just not going to look as polished if you don't use the same colour. So that means I'm going to have to do a new bobbin with this colour because this is the first time I'm using it. Now for those interested in what colour this is, or what batch number this is a new bro thread colour in the colour 614, which is a deep purple, I think it's called, or a plum. So you'll be able to see me wind the bobbin up a bit better as well. So it goes up to the hook and we go backwards around here. Then it goes to the bobbin. Now in terms of where you can get empty bobbins from, you can get one from Amazon. So this is a bobbin holder, which I need more of, but these can come with empty bobbins, which are great. So from here, wrap it around. Oops. I need to leave a little bit. There we go. Ooh. Cut that off. Push this. And start. Okay, so cut. There we go. Put it off there. And I'm going to put it into our bobbin. Now the way that we put these in, it has to go anti-clockwise when it unthreads. There is a picture on your machine anyways, but I don't want to go that way. Follow it round. Done. Pop our plate back on top. So from here, pull it. Oops. So it has, unfortunately, unravelled a bit. Okay, so now that's all set up. Now we can pop our project back under. Foot down and away. So as mentioned, this is just going to do an outline. So now we need to cut off the excess. Okay. So I'm going to start off with the back because our pins are pinning down the front a little bit. So flip it over. As you can see, we have a nice flower stitch down. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, just as close as you can get without cutting the stitching. Okay, so as you can see, it is not perfect by any means. We do have some extra bits, but this is going to get covered up by the satin stitch, so it doesn't really matter. Moving on to the front. I'm just pulling off the excess wash away top we don't need. We're going to leave the rest of it on. And pinning and cutting the excess material, because we don't want this to be hanging off once when our satin stitch is all on it. Now that we're all cut out, it's now going to do a satin stitch. So the satin stitch is going to go around the edge, and it's going to do this. So you can see that it's covered any scraggly bits, and it's left a nice clean edge. Finally, last thing, final, now that it's done, I'll show it. Okay, so as you can see, it is nice and crisp around the edge. We do have that sheen of the top layer still. So all we need to do now is take this out of the hoop, pull off as much of this as possible, and then it will just be washing it, which I'll show you in a different video, because it's essentially the same for all of my soluble wash away items. So taking out all the pins around the edge. And some scissors. A very common thing that happens on this channel, if you've watched any of my videos so far, you'll know that the camera tends to cut off the last little bit of my video because either I wasn't recording or the battery died. It's now been about 24 hours since I recorded this video originally. I've only just gotten around to editing the video and finding out that it cut off. I have obviously finished the pendulum mats that I wanted to make this week, but when you have finished your pendulum mat, you'll want to try and peel off as much of the top wash away as possible. Now the way that you can do that is by simply tearing, if you can get your nails under, or by using some tweezers and delicately making sure that you're not pulling out any of the fibres, picking up that extra bit. Now it doesn't have to be perfect, so quite a few of these I've left the triangles and in between the letters. As long as most of it is off, you should get a good finished product. So the reason why I pull off most of it is because when it's wet it gets tacky, and if it sinks into the velvet you can imagine that it does feel a little bit icky. So by pulling off as much as we can, we reduce that from happening. So these are made in preparation for a new year, a new batch of markets. My first market is going to be on Saturday the 31st of January at Matlock, Imperial Rooms Matlock, and that's with White Lights, Mind Body Spirit. I am hoping to also make some coasters as well as some more Damn It dolls before the event, so I am going to record a video on how to make coasters. That's next. Then the video after that would be our first market video. If you enjoyed this content, even though it's kind of a bit jittery, please like the video, leave a comment if you enjoyed it. It lets me know that this is content that you do enjoy and that you do want. I do plan on making more videos, for example making a tarot bag, I've got a new pattern for making a pouch purse, so that's going to be interesting, especially because I've not made one at all. This will be the first time I've made one. So thank you for watching. If you're interested in purchasing, you can find these on my website once when I upload them, and obviously clean them up because they need a photo shoot. Other than that, thanks for watching. Bye.